Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of a new series we will be doing on YouTube where you ask me questions, and I answer them. There are often so many times where questions are asked live while I'm streaming on Twitch, and since I hear some of them asked repeatedly, I feel the time is right to start creating a recurring show on this channel where we can document and assist even more players. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Question 1 comes from Accent Spore, who asks, as far as what to learn about, maybe tank nuance and things to look out for in Savage. I've leveled every tank and done easy content, but I have no idea how to Savage. More specifically, I don't really know what to look for or what to think about. Whether you're playing a tank, a DPS, or a healer in endgame content, one thing remains true. You're doing a dance with the boss while simultaneously executing your rotation. When tanking, this involves using defensive cooldowns as well as an offensive DPS rotation. And honestly, while this gives a lot of tanks anxiety, it's really not that bad. Everybody makes mistakes, and the biggest downside to tanking is that your mistake affects others on a grand scale. If you mess up your cooldowns and you die, everybody knows it immediately. Healers are going to feel overexertion if you miss cooldowns, melees may feel like they're working really hard to maintain positionals, and uptime if you're doing a cha-cha slab at the boss across the room. Keeping it stationary is big, making sure it's where it needs to be at the appropriate times is huge as well. Honestly, it can be a lot. My biggest piece of advice is to stay calm, map out your cooldowns, and do your best. Learning a fight's timeline is your biggest tool. This allows you to plan your cooldowns, maximize their effectiveness, and plan your bursts so you don't lose any big uses of big buttons due to downtime. If you can master timelines and planning, the rest is going to fall into place. And even if you can't, a lot of fights can largely be winged on the fly once you're geared. I really hope this helps, and if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Question 2 is from Alex Stone. Alex asks, what are some tips you have for people who are trying to go for week 1 clears? I have 2 big pieces of advice here. Number 1 is that if you have a fight that somebody in the group hasn't done, go back and do it, okay? Going into past fights unsynced and familiarizing yourself with mechanics is really important. Their names, how they're handled, what to do if they go wrong, just executing them. The point of the lesson will not be to kill the bosses, but it's going to be to build upon your mechanical library to pull from in the future. If you have a great database of fights past, it's more likely that you and your team will be able to successfully complete a recurring mechanic if you can reference previous iterations. A few examples of this that I can quickly recall in the past would be if we have a Protean wave and you call Protean, the team instantly knows that they need to be in their clock spots and spread out because we have something happening where the 8 of us can't be together. And if you were to go, oh, okay, this one's white hole, right? Then the healers are going to know that they instantly need to top your team off. If you call out Charybdis, they know they're about to go to 1 HP, or any other situation. Yeah, I can give you a really good example actually from our Edensverse progress in E8 Savage, which was Shiva. A lot of her mirror mechanics pulled from older fights. We actually referenced God Kefka quite a few times in that encounter, and it really smoothed the process because every player was on the same page and knew what mechanics we were talking about and instantly were able to handle what it was that was coming at us. And it really helps ease the burden. My other piece of advice would be, if you're going to watch other teams, try to watch a POV from the jobs you're playing, or maybe if you have a player who struggles more than others, try to watch a POV from that player's job or role so that you can help ease them into how they will handle the fights. You're gonna get pretty close knowledge to how you'll have to handle the fight if you watch a POV from your own role, and in a lot of situations, what the other roles will need to execute and do aren't really going to affect what you need to do. For example, maybe as a tank, I don't have to handle X mechanic or Y mechanic, but the healers have to put in a lot of work. So watching POVs where you can learn how to operate and move your own role would be important, or if you're the raid leader, maybe you want to watch how another role operates to see maybe how what you're doing is affecting them, or how to see just how they may solve the puzzle themselves. Any little bit to help your team complete the fight is going to be important. And outside of those 2 things, I really recommend just keeping calm and ensuring everyone's on the same page. If you're going for long hours, make sure that you're resting properly, make sure that you're taking breaks and you're eating. And if you're not going too many extended hours, maybe just regular raid nights, then you really want to study so you can maximize the effectiveness of your time. And that doesn't necessarily mean studying during raid time. You should be pulling the boss. Spend your time outside, make resources, make diagrams, help people figure out where they need to be to figure out what it is you're going to be going into. If you're going to do a fight without any prior knowledge, pull the boss, set expectations, learn terminology, and shot calling so that you are on the same page when you call what you need to do. If you need to spread, make sure you're going to say the same thing every time. If you're going to move clockwise or counterclockwise or left or right or front or back, just make sure it's uniform. Otherwise, if you are going to watch streams, you're going to go in with prior knowledge, ensure that everybody has access to the resources and that nobody is really failing to put in their effort. Because the last thing you're going to want is infighting if people feel like maybe there isn't an equal amount of effort across everybody. If you could do that and you can ensure your goals are the same, you're going to succeed and you'll be fine. And again, don't let the stress of a week 1 clear stunt your ability to enjoy the experience. Go at it and have fun. It is a game. If you have to kill it week 2, not a big deal. But if you're really squeezing for that week 1 clear, use any tool at your disposal to get that win. I hope that helps. We're going to move on to question number 3, which is from Ash, who is asking, as a somewhat new player to the game, only playing for about a year at this point, what should I expect Endwalker's launch to look like? Will I be sitting in queues for hours, or will I struggle to do quests because of the crowd? Anything that I think is worth mentioning will help them. So let's see what I can say. Well, I can't know for sure because I can't read the future. What I can say about past launches is that while there's going to be large congestion from area to area as the masses are logging in and going through each section, we're going to find at the beginning, the level 81 areas are going to just be hugely impacted and congested. And we're going to see as people level throughout the day, the 83, 85, etc. over the course of the weekend, all those areas are going to begin to get congested. And that's especially going to ring true during prime time hours as people are getting home from work and when servers first go up. And I would not be surprised if queues are anywhere from 30 minutes to upwards of 2 hours to get online. We know that they've been working really hard at Square Enix and the Final Fantasy XIV team to get the hardware and ensure that we have a smooth experience and that there's enough capacity for everybody. But expansions are always hugely booming. People returning, people that are playing that have been playing this whole time. It's just going to be a largely congested time. And it's probably not going to impact a lot of people based on where their progression is, but if it does impact you, don't worry too much. Use that time. Maybe queues are down and you can't get into a dungeon, so you use that time to work on your gatherers or crafters, or maybe you're just checking out Glamour or hanging out with other people. Maybe you can go back and unlock Reaper or Sage and give those a few levels if you were working on a new job immediately. There's going to be so much to do, and the expansion's not going anywhere. I think it's going to be the smoothest expansion they've had so far. Hopefully. That is my number one thought, is that I think it's going to be really nice. I really don't think it's going to be too bad. It's just par for the course to expect a couple of hiccups along the way, but the Final Fantasy XIV team's always done a really good job about it. As far as completing quests go, hopefully we're not gated with a solo instance right away like we were in Stormblood launch with Robon's Wall. That was really bad. I think they've learned their lesson, and I don't think we're going to get a solo instance again right away. However, if we do, we'll just do our best. And as far as your turning in your quests, there are going to be times, and you may have even already seen it at some point in your gameplay, where players are covering an NPC you're trying to talk to, or the dialogue on the ground. Maybe there's a destination point you're trying to click and you can't because there are people on top of it. There is a hotkey to target filters so that all of the players become untargetable and you can select the destination or NPC you're trying to click. For me, I have that set to X. For you, you can go into your keybinds and you can go over to your system and check it there. You scroll down a little bit, you should find the option. The other thing I would say about when you're traversing the lands and you're going through the new expansion and you're teleporting all over the place is when you're teleporting on the minimap and you're using the minimap to teleport, you can hold, I believe it's control, to bring the Aetheryte to the front. So there's going to be a bunch of side quests, maybe on your map, maybe you've done them, maybe you haven't. You hold control, it's going to bring that Aetheryte to the front, you can click it right away. That's going to ease it up and speed it up a lot. And I hope that helps you. And again, I can't tell the future, but my fingers are crossed that it's going to be a really smooth launch. Question number 4 is going to be from Big Ezzy Eduardo, who wants more information about PvP. They said, I'm about to venture into PvP for the first time, so the ins and outs of PvP is at the top of my list. What do you got to say? PvP can be quite fun, but it's easily overwhelming if you don't know what you're doing. I strongly recommend checking out the PvP Revival Discord, which will be linked in the comments below. They have resources for all game modes, and with the upcoming Crystal Conflict in patch 6.1, we're going to have so many players who are entering the fray and new to PvP, or just getting used to the new game mode as we're all going to be new. Definitely give them a look, as they're my #1 go-to for new players. If you're looking for a streamer or YouTube content creator or PvP play, I would recommend Brian Ricardo. He's amazing and does really good work. He has guides over on YouTube as well as just live play in the Feast. You could check out frontline information. Again, check out the Discord, link will be below. Question number 5 is from Vi, who's hitting us with something I would like to learn here is the priority the game has. Take relativities in E12S, when they make DPS on one side have a double debuff, is there a way to manipulate it, or to take T with Fate Calibration Beta? Is there a way to manipulate the game in order to gain a specific buff? This is a really interesting question. In both examples you listed, it's actually not possible to manipulate your debuffs. However, there are fights in which you can dictate who gets what due to the ways things are selected. Now, in the examples you gave, let's say you were talking about advanced relativity, and a DPS has to swap because both players on the same side got something where they can't complete the mechanic if they stay there. That is why a lot of players will come up with a priority system. Maybe you'll have the range swap, maybe you'll have a flex between the melees. But it's really nice that we have come to that conclusion and we have something that's uniform and able for Party Finder to easily complete mechanics. Now, if we were to talk about fights where you could manipulate, we would say God Kefka under Forsaken 2. The DPS could be proximity based. We would have our melees stand inside the boss's hitbox while the range stood outside, and that would help manipulate who got baits on the ground versus who had to handle another mechanic. Another example would be E12S. During Phase 2 in Oracle of Darkness, the Darkest Dance is going to hit your furthest player, so the tank backs up, they get hit, everybody else is nice and gets knocked back, and everything's nice and fine. In T, you have Protean Waves, which are baited on the closest players to their respective tornadoes or the boss, and there's a lot of other examples too. Each fight's unique, and sometimes the game has systems in place to select players, and sometimes it selects players based on their roles. Sometimes it's completely random. I hope we get to see a great combination of these in Endwalker, and I can't wait to see how they operate. I hope that helps you out a little bit and gives you some insight, as you may have been trying to bash your head against a wall trying to bait something that can't be baited. And I know I've been there, and here's a story for you. Back in Stormblood's launch, when we got our Shinryu Extreme fight, we had a situation where Shinryu would paralyze players, and we were trying to figure out how some players were getting paralyzed and others were not. Really, well, it's got to be something is happening. And it turns out, we found out later that it was a 15% RNG chance per player to get paralyzed when the mechanic would execute. And that felt so infuriating because we tried for so long to figure out what it was and we just couldn't figure it out. So if you're giving yourself a headache trying to figure out how to bait something, don't worry about it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, there would be another solution. Hopefully that helps you, and we'll move on to our next question, which is from Cello. Cello asks, or states, I would love more in-depth on the music they picked and how they begin the process to produce the soundtrack for the game. I feel as though they can't miss. And you know what? I kind of agree with you. The soundtrack for Final Fantasy XIV is definitely one of my favorites, and it's my top, if nothing else. There's Persona has really good soundtracks. There are a couple of other games too, but Final Fantasy XIV has always knocked it out of the park with every encounter they've had, all of their open areas. Everything is just constantly, I could listen to nothing but the BGM while I'm playing the game, and it would be fine by me. I'd love to know more about the process as well. As a fellow music enthusiast, Cello, you might want to check out Alex Mukala if you haven't already. His discussions and renditions of pretty much anything he's done are 20 out of 10, and I'd be surprised if the world doesn't know who this man is by now. Number 7 is going to be a question from Chili, who's saying, more statement than anything. Chili says, I want to learn more classes and master them. It's a broad answer, I know, but it's true. I'm going to be the best. And you know what, Chili, my friend? You can do anything you set your heart to, and I know that you can do it, and I firmly believe that. We all can. If we have a little bit of drive and a whole lot of passion, we can all achieve what we want. I'll also be branching out in Endwalker. Speaking of that, I want to play Reaper at a competitive level. I'll still be a tank main, and I'm still going to play healers and DPS as well, but I want to give a few jobs a try that I haven't really tried before, and Endwalker is going to be the perfect time for that. So Chili, my dude, you go ahead and master all the classes you want, because I know you can do it. Speaking of other things people want to do, Crypty Mike has question number 8, which is about Palace of the Dead as well as gardening and workshops, because all three of those things are things that players may not interact with regularly. They say, I'm curious about Palace of the Dead solo runs, as well as gardening and company workshops. And I, for one, I can't really speak towards gardening and company workshops myself, as I've been in charge of an FC and we've had FC grounds before, but I've never been the one to actually handle the gardening nor the workshops. That's always been up to somebody who is a little bit more knowledgeable in that area, so I couldn't speak to that directly. But as far as Palace of the Dead goes, my number one go-to, if you haven't already, check out Angelus Demonis. You've got to check out his channel. He has live tutorials, videos on YouTube, live streams on Twitch almost every single day, and does Heaven on High and Palace of the Dead solos at all times. He's going to be competing for World First Reaper and Sage, Heaven on High and Palace of the Dead, and you could find nobody better. There are also resource guides out there if you like text-based guides, but Angelus's description will be in the comments below. Question number 9. And it's going to be our final question today, and it's appropriately about Gunbreaker. Terrorball says, this one's more targeted to you because you're the Gunbreaker expert. Should we do Gnashing Fang off cooldown despite it not lining up with No Mercy, or should we delay it by a GCD? I feel the latter option is the answer, but it also feels wasteful. And you know what? I can completely understand how it feels wasteful because you're delaying something, and in this game you try to use everything on cooldown. So I'll begin by explaining a term to people that they may not have heard. It's called reverse drift. Reverse drift is when you have an ability, maybe it's a weapon skill, maybe it's an OGCD, and it's affected by skill speed or spell speed. Currently, we have Gnashing Fang and Sonic Break, which are affected by our skill speed. In Endwalker, we will also have Double Down. For Gunbreakers, this means that our Gnashing Fang is going to come up naturally before our No Mercy is ready, if it's the first button we have hit in No Mercy and we have a GCD faster than 2.45. Typically speaking, that's going to be the case for you. In order to prevent using our big buttons before our burst, we hold Gnashing Fang for a single GCD so that it lines up under our raid buffs, and that makes a lot of sense. You might not feel good doing it, but it is the correct play. During Shadowbringers, in Endwalker, this may change. If our No Mercy remains 20 seconds and the rotation remains what we saw in Endwalker, we may find ourselves from the Media Tour operating under a pretense where we have to use a Gnashing Fang before No Mercy in order to get our Burst Strike at the end of the window, which now has a Hypervelocity OGCD. Due to the potencies we saw during the Media Tour build, it would be a gain to use Gnashing Fang before No Mercy under specific situations, when our Bloodfest is ready, for example. We'll have to wait until the live servers come up before we, fully decide whether that's going to be a gain or not. I'll be checking it immediately. We don't have too long to wait. Please be patient, but for the remainder of the expansion, please do not use Gnashing Fang before No Mercy. Hold it that GCD. Use everything under your buffs. And on that note, we're going to double up and give you a secondary answer on a question that I've received a lot, but not specifically at this time. Rin, do we use Bloodfest on cooldown or hold it for our next No Mercy? If you use Bloodfest on cooldown, assuming you have 0 cartridges when it comes up, otherwise you Burst Strike, you are going to naturally have every other Bloodfest land in a No Mercy window. It'll be at 0, it'll be at 3, 6, etc., etc. Now, downtime in fights could change things as well, and you'll just kind of have to play and go with the flow and learn the priority system for Gunbreaker, when to use Gnashing, when to use your Burst Strikes, get your Bloodfest going based on the fights. In a lot of fights we have a lot of uptime. It's not really the case. We could just do the Bloodfest as it comes up. There are situations in which you might hold it based on kill time, but the general rule of thumb, use it when it's ready. If you hold Bloodfest, for example, let's say you used it on the pull, and now it comes up at 1 minute 30, and you hold it for that 2 minute No Mercy. Now, you're going to have another Bloodfest come up at, you're going to have it come up at 3.5 minutes. Do you hold it for 4 minutes? Let's say you do. Now it comes up for 5.5. Let's hold it for 6. You've now lost an entire use because you've held it for a total of 90 seconds, which is its cooldown. So for that reason, use it when it's ready, and you're going to find success. And that'll be it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed today's session, and if you've got any questions at all that you'd like me to answer, please let me know in the comments below. As always, subscribing to the channel is free and is the easiest way to keep in touch. The best part is, if you don't like us anymore, you can just unsubscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.